yeah, finally came back to Apple. It was really kind of home for me, and apparently I'm going to die there. So no joke, I was like a coding monk or something. Like, it'd be like if you got married and every day you woke up and you said, am I married to the right person? To have that thought in your head the whole time. When I was young, I thought I'd be at Apple, but then I decided I wanted to be at Next, and then I show up at Next, and then we get acquired by Apple. So back at Apple again.
Craig Federighi is unquestionably the most cheerful, humble, and approachable guy at top echelons of Apple management. He is not afraid to laugh at himself, make goofy jokes, and just be himself, really. He is the best comedian Apple ever had, and today we're going to take a look at his career and how he got to lead hundreds of engineers and developers, and what lessons he has learned working with Steve Jobs and other legendary people at Apple. Back in university, Craig didn't really have any social life, which is not surprising given how much he knows about tech when you hear his interviews.
The narrowness socially of my life cannot be overstated because I was so focused on academics and coding and playing guitar. That was all I had room for. And so the parts of the college experience, I guess I could go back and do it again and just do the social part and forget the academics part, and then I'd even it all out.
Craig is best known for his presentations at WWDC and, of course, other Apple keynotes. It's like a shot of an adrenaline with other presenters being quite boring, but he actually worked on the radio back in university days. However, it wasn't exactly so smooth as it is right now. I remember back when Steve Jobs was alive, they were rehearsing a presentation, a keynote, and Craig just couldn't nail one bit, and then Steve just, in his usual fashion, he said, I'm going to throw you out. You're not going to be a part of this if you don't nail it now. And then you could see actually a few presentations that are on YouTube where Craig's hands are actually shaking. That was the power of Steve Jobs.
And I grew up a pretty shy, socially awkward guy. Certainly didn't get into computer science for the fame element of it. It's not kind of where you think is your path to the stage traditionally. And so the fact things kind of went that way was quite surprising. In high school, I actually was a DJ. We had a radio station at my high school. I mean, it's called a radio station. We had an 10-watt transmitter, which had an 8-mile range. But it was this opportunity for years to just talk on the air. So I got to think that actually played a role later on with being comfortable communicating with people. But that's so I say those things that you do that don't seem like the central thing in your career. You have your deep area of expertise, but some of these other things, they turn out to maybe play a role that you couldn't have possibly anticipated.
But back when Craig was 10, his mom sent him to an after-school event, and that was the time he has seen what computer can do for the first time.
It was a mind-blowing event. In fact, there were several hours of trying to draw pictures by, plotting lines. And I thought, this is dumb. But then there was a moment at the very end where they had us write this program. How old are you? Input A, print in 10 years, you will be A plus 10. And my mind exploded. I mean, that was it. I was like, I know exactly the future now, and I am going to be part of it. It's all about computers.
Then he goes on to do whatever it takes to get that machine.
So I started doing housework and doing weeding, and I was doing all these chores because I was going to buy a computer. And eventually I did. I bought a TRS-80 color computer, look it up, 6809 processor, decent thing. I couldn't afford an Apple at the time, but I worked. I got jobs, little odd jobs doing programming. After I taught myself some things, eventually I was able to afford an Apple. And then finally in 1984, the Mac came out, and I was able to experience the Mac.
When Craig was at Berkeley, he had a big plan of working for Apple someday, but then this event happened and it changed everything.
In 1988, I think it was, Steve Jobs had since left Apple, and he had introduced the Next machine in San Francisco, and he came to Berkeley to kind of give a re-performance of the launch of the Mac. There was no YouTube then. I wasn't going to be able to see that launch online, but he came to the PSL and he kind of redid the whole launch of the product and showed off the Next Cube. And for me, this was just an absolute revelation. I thought it was just incredible. And so I decided, no, I'm not going to work for Apple. I'm going to work for Next. So that was my future.
As he was about to graduate from Berkeley, and in his own words, he didn't really do much to find the job. And then there was Oracle, a company that was hiring super aggressively. He jumped on board. And then he obviously wanted to work for Apple, but then there was Next, a largely failing company, and didn't really make any sense on paper. But then Craig goes and joins it.
When I had been at Oracle, and like I say, I largely landed at Oracle because they take me on when I said, I'm only going to work for you for 6 months and then I'm going to leave and ski. They met that bar. And yet I found myself there. And there was a time when video on demand started to be a big thing. And it was interesting. It was new. And I'd done a little grad work in that area too. And there was an idea that I could be part of the project that was going to be the big thing at Oracle. It was taking off, it was super well funded, et cetera. Or I could go fill my dream of working for Next. And I interviewed at Next. They said Oracle had been very good to me. And so at Next, they said, well, you're really overpaid. And I said, oh, that's a bummer. And so there was this point where it's like Next was largely a failing company, right? They'd gotten out of the hardware business, kind of no one was buying the software. And yet Oracle was going to go big in this space that seemed so promising and emerging. There was one that I just felt like I want to be part of that. I want to be with them. I feel like I could learn so much. And for me, that one of the best decisions, certainly in my entire career, to be among those people. I mean, little did we realize then that what we were creating at Next to run in this square foot box was the foundation of whatever, billion people were going to have in their pockets.
He's referring, of course, to the Unix-based Next Step operating system that Apple has bought when they bought Next. And then that's what the modern macOS is based on. And then iOS, which is running on our iPhones, is based on the scaled down version of macOS. So essentially, it all goes back to the days where Craig was working with Steve Jobs at Next.
And I think maybe there was an element of just what you sense about the people and the work that you can't articulate it to yourself, but you can feel it, and that's part of the attraction. And that was there for me.
So Craig worked with Steve Jobs at Next, then Apple acquires Next, then Craig is back at Apple, and he worked from 1996 until 1999 when he left and joined Ariba. Now I'm curious why. My guess is because things were quite chaotic back then, and Steve was as fierce as always. I don't know, but I'd be curious what Craig would say for that.
I did platform architecture, kind of UI and app design, product strategy. I was sort of the demo guy. So this was good times, but most importantly in this period of my life, I defied all expectations and met a woman, my wife, who agreed to marry me. So this was fantastic.
And in 2009, he's back at Apple. Now, we don't know exactly who pulled the strings, but there's a stat where it says that most people who work at the company for more than 6 years, that's where they're going to be working forever. It was 10 years at Ariba for Craig, but then somebody got him back.
I returned finally came back to Apple. It was really kind of home for me, and apparently I'm going to die there. So I started with Mac OS. And then went on to do iOS as well. And it's been an incredible opportunity and journey for me there.
And finally, these are the biggest things that Craig has learned about life, about working at Apple, getting to this position, and with all the people he has been surrounded with. Really cool insights, amazing, especially if your career is in engineering or development.
I think the most important thing to do is to focus on doing what you love. If you're worried about where you're going, where this all will take you, if you're too focused on the destination, I think you'll miss the journey. And when you do what you love, it turns out that the things you do in your spare time, like on my time, if I have a moment on the weekend, I'm going to be reading things about programming. I'm going to be reading things about software or artificial intelligence, because that's what I love. If you do something you love, it's like cheating, because all of your recreational time actually turns into time that helps you develop in your career. So work with people whose work you admire. I think the thing about me being drawn to Next was I saw this product back in '88. I need to see what it's like to be among the people who can do that kind of thing. And so I felt magnetically drawn to be among the people who did this kind of work that I really appreciated and to learn from them. Pay attention. It's amazing in life. One of my kids actually said to me the other day, they said, I figured out a secret, like in class, pay attention. I thought, wow. Because they're like, all the other kids are not paying any attention, and we have to sit there anyway. Imagine how much you could learn if you paid attention. But during life, I mean, you are, through your working life, through your school life, you're surrounded with all of these opportunities to learn, and not just in your field, not just in the thing that you think you're studying, but all those things peripheral to the field you're studying. There's so many fascinating things to learn. And for me, I carried around a notebook, paper, and a pencil, and was just taking notes all the time. People thought I was like a wandering reporter or spy or something, because I was just constantly jotting things down, because there's just so many interesting things. And if you're making use of the time to suck them all in, if you're curious, it really helps. Never stop acting like the new one on the team. When you first join a team, you show up and no one expects you to know anything. And so you get to ask the stupid questions. You get to say, oh, I don't know anything about that. Can you tell me about that? Why did we do that? I've never stopped being that person. That's such a valuable moment to say, it's okay if I don't know everything. I can have questions. It turns out some of those questions are questions that team probably should have been asking themselves and wasn't. And so if you're asking them, you might get some answers that everybody needs to hear. But also, it's that permission to just be learning and learning and learning. Because it's not just about being narrow and being, wanting to be secure in one little area. Every adjacency is an area to explore. And the way you're going to broaden yourself and learn is to just feel the permission to ask the questions all along the way. When I've joined projects, I've decided that whatever the team's mission is, whatever we're trying to accomplish, I want to be part of making that happen. I want to do everything that can be done to make that happen. There's a point I joined a team and they weren't a part of the release where it was all about bug fixing. All I was going to do for a year was fix bugs, which didn't sound like the coolest thing to do. Turned out being an incredible learning opportunity. There was a part we had to work on performance. Well, I got to learn about performance because we had to fix the performance of the thing I was working on. If you're focused more about what does this mean for me, what am I interested in, I think you miss out on all of those opportunities. I guess I always looked at my career as I'm going to spend 4 or 5 years, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to wake up each morning and say, am I doing the right thing? Should I take a turn here? Is this my path to where I want to be? Instead, I said, this is what I'm going to do. And my focus is just immersing myself in that thing. Because it'd be like if you got married and every day you woke up and you said, am I married to the right person? Like that would not be a good relationship, right? To have that thought in your head the whole time, super bad. So I do not have that thought in my head. But the same thing can happen in work. You see these people so worried about, angsty about, am I in the right job? Am I heading in the right direction? Assess the situation, make a choice. All these choices are imperfect, and then commit for a while. Set yourself a deadline and say, in a year or 4 years from now, I'm going to step back from having done all this and then assess what I want to do next. But that certainly has been important to me, both in my sanity and in my ability to really commit in a way that I think allowed me to learn and do good work. There have been numerous, in sort of the most important decisions I've had to make. I had an important decision to make, and I asked my dad, I'm having trouble. Do I take this job here, or do I go to grad school? Do I take this position here, or do I go over here? When I went to Next, I took a big pay cut to join a failing company. Didn't seem like too smart a move. My dad said, make a list, write down all the good and bad of this decision, add it all up. There you go. I made the list. I obviously shouldn't go work for Next. But when I thought of making the decision on that side of thing, it just got a feeling in my gut, like, no, I want to be there. And it turned out there was probably something wise or intuitive about what was drawing me to the right decision, and the ability to listen to yourself in those moments and make those decisions. I think over and over on the most important decisions, that's been super important. And then when you're there, you feel good about it. Someone said, hey, you should manage this team. When I was an individual contributor and they said, you should manage this team. I had no aspirations of management at that time. It was super early. It seemed weird, but it was because my focus had been not just my narrow thing, but like, what can I do for the team? What are all the different problems I can solve? They said, oh, you should probably manage it. You seem to have this broader concern for the project. When I was then managing my team, but I was kind of concerned about how my project fit in with other projects and solving that broader problem and trying to help out here and there. They said, oh, you should lead this collection. They kept pulling me up. And at some point I'm like, what are you doing? You're making a big mistake. And, but it is, I think, if you're not too worried about getting there, but you're just trying to do the job, at times it turns out that people see in you maybe being the solution to a problem they have to solve, which is get something led.
This was Craig Federighi, his 8 principles for success, and his career path just before that. Thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing for similar content like that, and I will see you in the next one.